Experience all football has to offer. See Victory League live.
Okay, Caroline.
All right, Shae, up against the old club again this week, mate. Done it twice this season so far. How's it been?
It was really interesting the first time. It was obviously mixed emotions, a little bit strange and a little bit surreal in some moments, but that's all done and dusted with now. And got out of the way with the first game and we played them the second time, like you said. So anything to do with me playing the old club is probably varied by now. We're just approaching it like we do any other game, and personally I'm approaching it like we do other games as well, and looking forward to it.
Do you expect a bit of lip out there or anything like that?
I expect a little bit of lip from some of the older lads that they have, like Hugh Ludford and people like that, but a lot of the younger ones that South Hobart have reasonably quiet individuals, so it's probably not too much, no.
What's the best sledge you had in the first two games?
I think I copped from any sledges. You do attract a few when you're 6 and 7 and 8 0 down against the old club, but nothing in particular stands out. They're not a particularly witty bunch.
Are you enjoying your time at Glenorchy?
I have. It's had highs and lows, probably more than other years. The last few years before I went to the Knights have been fairly smooth sailing. This one's had high moments and low moments, but I have really enjoyed the challenge of it. I think I've grown a little bit as a player as well. And so I think it's really good for players who have had it easy for a long time to go and find out what it's like at clubs where it doesn't all just fall at your feet.
Any regrets?
No regrets about moving clubs, maybe some regrets about certain incidents that we've had during the year at the Knights, just games that we should have closed out and that we haven't, like when we were 2-0 up against Devonport with 10 minutes left and let them come back in to get a draw, and a few little things like that where the league, as it becomes more and more professional, is very, very results driven, and we know that we've probably had 4 or 5 games during the year that we could have taken more from it, and if we had done that we'd be sitting much further up the ladder and we wouldn't have all the pressure that we have now.
I guess you knew by leaving South you're at risk of missing out on another championship this year, I suppose. That's in the back of your mind when you made the decision?
It was in the back of my mind. The main thing that you miss when you leave South Hobart is playing the big games. You know that when you leave South Hobart that you're probably not going to be involved in things like the FFA Cup that they're playing now, the NPL Championship. It's not so much the week-to-week things. I don't struggle with that, but then when I sit down and watch them play Tuggers in the FFA Cup, that's difficult to watch from the sideline and things like that.
So why did you move? What was the attraction of missing out on all that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a certain nostalgia factor about coming back to the Glenorchy Knights, and I really respect Chris Hay as a coach, and he's been contacting me for many years, and I wasn't that interested. And then got to a little bit of a stage in my life where I was a little bit older and reassessing things, and there's a lot of really good young players coming through South Hobart whilst I was there that were getting very little game time, and in some respects I felt like I was probably holding one of those people back, players like Cameron Rogers and a couple of other young midfielders that were just sitting on the bench week in, week out, so the dinosaurs like me could run around out there. It's maybe not ideal for them, not ideal for the game, and I think the club was starting to move in another direction anyway with wanting to progress some of the youth, so it was, it certainly didn't hurt their playing respects as we've seen having me leave because they've carried on. What
are your plans at Knights? How long do you plan to stick around for, and can Knights be a team that maybe goes into the FFA Cup in the next coming years or that sort of thing? Knights definitely will be back near the top of the game over the next few years. Whether I'll be there personally is difficult. I'm starting to get a little bit older. I turned 30 this year, which is scary, but by the same respect, I've never had a major injury, touch wood. I've never been particularly fit, so I'm as fit as I have ever been. So there's no reason that I couldn't keep playing, I guess, for another few years, but as you get busy with work and other things like that, other things take priority. So the deciding factor in how long I'm at the Knights probably won't be from a soccer perspective, but I'd like to be there for a few years because I think that they are moving in the right direction. A lot of the players that they have coming through are very young. People predicted big things from us this year, which I think was probably a little bit unfair, and internally I don't think we expected a whole lot more than we've given. You aim for more, but you're realistic about what you get. And I think over the next 2 to 3 years you'll find that the Knights will definitely be in the top 4 and pushing for these titles. Could you see yourself as head coach of Knights? I'd love to move into coaching at some stage. I've played soccer since I was 5 years old. It's been a massive part of my life, and I can't see myself moving away from football. I've always been involved in some respect. I've seen Ken and Chris and the way that they operate, and the amount of their personal life that they give over to the game is phenomenal. And
Whether I'll be in a position over the next couple of years to dedicate that much of my life to football, I'm not sure. So it might be something that I return to coaching in 3 or 4 or 5 years when things settle down a little bit with work and other areas of life. But I definitely will be involved in coaching at some stage.
There's no risk of you moving to another Victory League club because you're not happy if you're in the Victory League you'll be at Glenorchy?
If I'm in the Victory League, I'll be at Glenorchy Knights. Yeah.
You would have had front row seats to the Jaden Hay, Chris Hay battle earlier this year. How did you find that? Was that something you haven't seen before, I guess, a bit unique?
It was unique. There's not too many father-son playing combinations in the Victory League beyond Ken Morton and Nick Morton, and they do it fairly well. It was a unique situation between Chris and Jaden and difficult for both of them. And it probably looked a little bit messier from the outside than it was from the inside. It was all very amicable from the inside, and Chris supported his decision, and there was no animosity between the playing group and Jaden. And everybody thought that, whilst nobody wants to lose a top calibre player, and we're certainly not in a position that we can afford to give away to many of these players. But I think it was probably definitely the best thing for Jaden moving forwards, and the best thing for Chris too. And when you have a good outcome for what was then your captain and your coach, then that flows on to be a good outcome for the team.
What will the feeling be like this weekend between the Glenorchy playing group and Jaden for South?
It'll be interesting. Some of the older players that have been at the Knights and played with Jaden for a very long time, your Sam Johnsons and people like that, will probably be a little bit trickier for them than people like me who have only played with him for a short stint at the start of the year. We won't treat him any differently to other players. We're not going to go out and try and hurt him or kick him or anything like that. But if the opportunity arises for a hard tackle, it'll be no different than you would with anybody else. Yeah, and I read somewhere else in the media today that we've been well and truly written off, and I found that really interesting. One of the reasons quoted was that we had 7 or 8 players out, and it was written that makes it a mockery of the league when things like that happen. And I took a backward step at that one because I definitely don't agree with it. I think it's really important to note that whilst we have 7 or 8 players out from the 20-man squad, that only 2 or 3 of these players would have been starting players anyway for this weekend. And whilst we'd love to have a full complement, we're lucky that we're in a situation now as a club where every week we're presented with 2 or 3 difficult decisions about who we're going to play where, and it usually comes down to form. Now, this week we're just in a situation where those 2 or 3 decisions are made for us. And so in some respects it's a little bit less of a coaching headache. And I've got no doubt that the team that we put on the field tomorrow will be as strong as any team that we've put on the field all year. And we're out to give South Hobart a very hard day at the office. And if they write us off, I'll find myself coming up with a loss.